Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're talking about the difficulty we have with facing change and the space between something finishing and moving forwards into whatever comes next. A conversation about the King's coronation has us choosing an imaginary president. I get excited about apples. Martin is grateful for leftovers. And we wonder whether some of the things he forgot about while he was in the madness of addiction might have included driving across the mayor's lawn. Dealing with endings. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. Yeah, how about you?
We managed to speak over each other with only about 2 seconds gone there.
It doesn't come across as greatly professional, I agree, but it shows it's real, isn't it?
It is real. It is a snapshot of real life.
It is. We're not chatbots doing this, are we? We're not avatars.
No, this is not. This is an AI-free zone, isn't it?
It is at the moment.
Not only is there no artificial intelligence, there's no intelligence.
Real or otherwise, yeah.
Anyway, how are you?
I'm in good shape, thanks, mate. Yeah.
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
Well, yes, emotionally in good shape.
Did you watch the coronation yesterday?
I didn't know. No, I was busy running a peer support group.
Were you?
Yeah, we did give. We said, does everyone want to not come to group because of the coronation? Everyone said no. We still want to come to it. They got their priorities right, which I was very proud of.
Yeah. I was quite proud of myself because I managed to avoid the entire thing.
Did you? Yeah. Good work. Not even the highlights on the news or anything.
I didn't see the news. I didn't have the radio on. I didn't put the television on. It was fantastic. But of course, today it's going to be even more difficult because we've got a bloody street party along here.
Have you? I know how much you love those.
Absolute bullshit. I'm going to lose. I better be careful because I will lose all the monarchists.
You're not really an anti-royalist, though, or are you? I don't know what your stand is on that.
I wouldn't say I was an anti-royalist, but I had a great fondness for the old Queen.
Yeah, I think we all had. Yeah, didn't we? Yeah.
And I've got absolutely nothing against Charles. I think he has many redeeming features, but I'm not sure how I feel about the future of the monarchy, really. It's a bit of a shambles, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always felt pretty much on the fence about it all, I've got to say. It's a bit like having a family out of EastEnders in charge. I think they're wonderfully eccentric and dysfunctional.
Well, I suppose in that respect, they are probably a reasonable representation of the rest of us.
That's it. Yes. So I've got nothing against them, but I'm not particularly pro. I'm not Republican, but I'm not anti the royals particularly.
If you had to select a president from people that we would know, so celebrity, if you like, who would you choose as the president?
Billy Bragg, after he shat on me from last week.
Yeah, you're only saying that because then you'd be able to say you were shat on by the president.
Yeah, exactly that.
I'd choose Mary Chapin Carpenter.
For the same reason. Anyway,
I'd choose a woman president, definitely.
I think that's right. Yeah, it was nice having a queen in charge for so long.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Leslie Judd, probably, or something.
Leslie Judd. Let's go back a bit. Yeah, Wincy Willis.
I expect one or both of those are dead.
Yeah, probably are. Yeah, not really suitable for the job.
Anyway, there we are.
But anyway,
good.
The idea that this was one of your ideas that from a long time ago for an episode, and it's been on the list for a number of months, and I didn't really know what you were trying to get at, which is probably why I left it for so long.
Oh, okay.
But when I looked at it, and I thought, I'll do a bit of research into that, I began to sort of understand then why it is important, very relevant to those of us in recovery. So my notes are headed "Dealing with Endings."
I'm quite surprised that you. This is not This is not criticism of you, but I'm quite surprised that you couldn't kind of grasp why you felt that was an important thing to talk about.
I didn't really think about it. That's it. I think really it's on the list. I just brushed over it. I think there's better ones to go to. I thought I'll deal with that at some point if I have to.
Right.
And I'm at that if I have to moment.
Because it's always kind of this. I don't think this was the reason why I suggested it, but when you think about it, active addicts are struggling with endings.
Yeah.
That's what stops them going into recovery.
I know, and that's why it became more relevant to me as I read through it and thought, oh yeah, there's some good points in there. But before we start,
Yeah.
It's not any animal stories or anything this week, but I had some lovely feedback that I just wanted to mention from one
Is
of
it
our.
about you?
Yeah, well, no, it's jointly as well as
good.
It's a little bit. I wouldn't say it's egocentric in my place, but it doesn't. Anyway, you can make up your own mind.
Yeah.
It's from one of our regular listeners, Nick Moore. Now, Nick, he's given me permission to talk about it. In fact, he's just said to me, look, whatever I talk about, you've got he gave me open permission. He said,
wow.
Whatever I speak about, you're quite happy for you to use it on the podcast. But anyway, wow. He's a guy that I've known for as long as I've been in recovery myself. And I've watched him sort of really struggle with his demons over the years. But the fact that he's never given up trying has been a real inspiration. And he messaged me this week with a picture of his 6-month sobriety chip from one of the fellowships, which was a nice. I felt quite emotional. It was lovely, and he was thanking me initially for going along to, because he did a couple of gigs at the Maidstone Fringe this week or last weekend.
Yeah,
he did. In fact, he ended up doing 2 gigs in one day, which is quite. So I went
a bit like Phil Collins.
Yeah, very much like Phil Collins during Live Aid.
Yeah, is that where the similarity ends? Do you think?
I'd much prefer Nick's music to Phil Collins, as you know.
Did Nick do a cover of "In the Air Tonight" at the Maidstone Fringe?
No, he did a Sledgehammer and the old Peter Gabriel song.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's about the right era, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
It is. Yeah, but it wasn't London and Philadelphia like Phil Collins. It was the Town Hall and the Market House in Maidstone. So. But both very, very good gigs. Anyway, he thanked me for going along because several of us from Aspire went on to see him. But he went on to say, just thought I'd share this with you. That was the picture of the chip. As you know how long and hard earned these 6 months are. Thank you for all your support over the years. And I have to say that the podcast has been instrumental in keeping me afloat in some testing times, especially the last 6 months. It's really helped me have some eureka moments in regard to my life. And I thought, what a great bit of feedback.
That's lovely. And that's, I think, at any point when if someone takes anything from all of our tomfoolery and it helps them in some way to maintain their sobriety, or indeed in any other way, then that's really quite humbling, isn't it?
It is humbling, and you think, oh yeah, that's why we do it. It's very worthwhile, although we have fun doing it, and there are benefits to be gained from people that are listening to it. Then that's fantastic, and we can have all the listening figures in the world. We pass certain milestones from time to time, but you get one bit of feedback like that, and you think, you know what, that's good. Anyway, subject matter.
Yeah.
Dealing with endings. When I was researching this week, I come across the works of the late William Bridges. I don't think he's an American author and speaker. And it's so I've taken some of the information from what I was reading from his work, amongst others. But I think the opening phrase he was using, which I found quite nice as an opening gambit here as well, is our lives always involve change. We go through a series of phases. Phases. Seriously, actually, I should be doing this in a Shakespearean accent, really, shouldn't I?
Probably, yeah.
We go through a series of phases of endings, neutral zones, and new beginnings. There's no rule as to how long these stages will take. And we can also be going through several of these at the same time. So does that sort of fit? Is that a conduit between the way you understand endings and dealing with them? Because it seems to be that neutral zone which I found the most interesting, which is an ending has happened and it's how you deal with things next before new beginnings start.
Oh, well, that's the fertile void, isn't it?
I did mention that fertile void. Perhaps I've put in my handwritten comments next to my typed ones.
Yeah, that's part of why I suggested it. I think the other thing that is referenced in there is, or it's inferred strongly, is we can't avoid endings.
No.
They're going to happen anyway. And so, often, not always, but often it's our the way we respond to them, our willingness to deal with them, I think is so critical. You know, most of the time, turning away from an ending is not going to stop it happening, or avoiding an ending is probably going to make things worse. So if you can find it within yourself to embrace endings, embrace change, and recognize that it's a natural part of living, then you're probably going to be better off, as are the people who are around you.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And the endings, just to sort of clarify what they are really, they're things like divorce, aren't they? Or changing jobs, or moving house, or redundancy, or bereavement, which is a big one, or giving up the booze. Yeah, going into sobriety, and lots of other smaller endings as well. I think we come across them all the time, don't we? But they can be quite painful, can't they? Some of them. And they, again, when I was reading through some of this work by William Bridges, he was saying that they can involve a similar grieving process to that we go through with bereavement, with similar stages of anger, denial, and so on. And they can feel like big decisions have either been made at that point or have got to be made. Yeah. And also there can be an element of relief when you go through that as well. Perhaps you think, I've finally had the strength to end something. Yeah, but it's so do you think, when you're looking at those endings, it's important, isn't it, to give them the respect and time they deserve?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ones that are choppy, or the ones that we anticipate being choppy, are the ones we tend to have difficulty with. Okay. So take, for example, if you take yourself back to that point where you made the decision to go into recovery, what was the emotion that you felt most strongly?
Fear.
Exactly. So fear is one of the reasons why we avoid endings.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't want this to end. So active addiction, a destructive, toxic relationship. You could make an endless list almost. The thing that stops us embracing change is a fear of what's on the other side.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about this often, this kind of state of familiar pain.
Yeah.
You can be in a situation which you feel, is painful, is destructive to you, isn't helping you, but at least you know what it's like. Every day you wake up and it's like, well, yeah, I know this is shit, but it's my shit. Rather than Billy Bragg's. And your choice then becomes one of sitting in that, or throwing yourself out into the vagaries of the world and not knowing what's going to happen next. And so that fear of what will happen if I do create an ending here and I do move into something else is one of the things that really compels people to stay where they are, even when it's very destructive.
Which is, I think we've all noticed that people around us when they're stuck in bad relationship, for example, and they're scared of moving out because they don't know what's next. Or if you move jobs, I've done that in the past. When I went from the corporate world to becoming self-employed, it was very scary. There's a lot of fear there. It was the end of my sort of association with structured work and going out into and do, which I've been self-employed for all of my life virtually. But it was a big risk at the time and a big change.
But actually, that's a good example because it's an example of how the same situation can affect different people in different ways depending on where they are in their life. So when I left the corporate world and became self-employed, it didn't frighten me at all because I'd reached the point where I felt like that was the only thing I could do. I was so fed up, so tired being in corporate life that it had reached the point where it felt like a blessing. Anything was going to be better than that, right? And so I then didn't really think about how it could go wrong or what would happen if I didn't get any clients or if I couldn't pay the mortgage or whatever. Yeah. Something else was more powerful. So I think that's a good illustration of how this a situation that looks the same between this person and this person might affect them in fundamentally different ways depending on, what their previous experience have been or where they are in their lives or other things that are happening. And so that's why I think, trying to make a kind of definitive generalization about people finding difficulty dealing with endings is impossible.
Yeah, it is. And the more I read about it, the more that came to light.
Often creating an ending for yourself or, inviting an ending takes a lot of emotional courage.
Yeah, it does.
And I think we underestimate that. We underestimate what it might take for someone. I can't remember whether I was talking about this on here last week or whether it was just, I know I was talking about it to a client this week, but the absence of ending is something that occurs, you see it occurring so much in therapy. People will go through this phase where they come into therapy and they talk about how they're feeling and what's going on. And it might sometimes be quite a swift process getting to the point where they understand why they feel like they do. So the kind of clarity that they gain around, okay, if I put all these bits together, I understand why I feel like this. But the point from there to the point where they might make a change to improve some of those things can sometimes be interminable. It can be years sometimes. And they can be very, very frustrated by their own inaction. But it's an illustration of how difficult sometimes we find it to deal with an ending. So you can come in, you can have a very difficult relationship, for example. You might talk about it and you might have a real clear understanding of it, but then you still don't leave it. And you might not leave it for 6 months or a year or 2 years, because it's that thing about, if I face an ending, I don't know what's afterwards, and what if it's worse?
I think the advice we used to get from your parents was, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And that sort of held me back, that sort of mentality. During my early life, because I was I was always too scared in case the grass wasn't greener. But that even though I potentially wanted change, it wasn't something I was prepared to do because of the fear factor. But it's just this. So these endings happen. Sometimes they're forced upon us. Sometimes we'd engineer them ourselves. But it's this neutral zone that I found quite interesting, really, before something else starts. And it was the advice and how to deal with that William Bridges seems to look at, and comes up with some fairly relevant points. So if I just wanted to go through those, really, there's just 5 points. But do you think you mentioned the fertile void earlier? I know that I've mentioned it in groups in the past and had the piss taken at me because I mentioned it too much at one point. I didn't really realise that this neutral zone fitted in quite nicely with that as well. But the advice at this stage of these 5 points was the first point was about taking your time. It's important to be patient, and your beginning will come along perhaps when the time is right, and avoid temporary structures. That was something that struck with me as well, because if things are changing quickly, potentially if hasn't been forced, or it's been forced upon you, it's not something you've engineered. You need to take a bit of time before you take the next step. So it is nice to have this neutral zone, if you like, to think through things and to make sure that you're making the right decision. And if you do make big decisions during this neutral period, it can be that the ramifications can be quite significant. Would you agree?
Yeah, the longer you are happy to tolerate the discomfort of being in that, well, let's not call it the fertile void. Let's call it liminal space, because that's what it is.
Liminal space. I like that.
Yeah, the longer you can spend in there without trying to create comfort. So the longer you can tolerate discomfort, the more likely you are to make good decisions about where next. Because so something. Let's think of a relationship. Most people listening to this will have been through the ending of a relationship. Mostly that really hurts. But the longer you can tolerate that discomfort, that hurt, without trying to knee-jerk yourself into something else, i.e. get into another relationship on the rebound or whatever it might be, or, drink heavily to block out the feelings. The more you can tolerate those feelings, the more likely you are to be able to proceed through them with some sort of serenity and get to the point where you feel again able to take stock and say, right, now what do I want? What do I want to do next? What can I do to make sure I avoid whatever happened in the past? What can I do to get closer to what I'm really wanting for my own life? But as I say, most of the time that will require you tolerating some discomfort on the way, and that's what trips a lot of people up.
And that you've sort of covered point number 2, really, to a large extent there, which was don't act for the sake of action, i.e. don't push yourself to act just because you hate the feelings. You're likely to make daft decisions if you do that, i.e. like having a relationship on the rebounds. You must have read my notes virtually in advance.
There you go.
That happens a lot, doesn't it? When you don't like the feeling of potentially, if you've been dumped by Sophie on Maidstone East, back in the 70s.
Did you get straight into another relationship?
No, I didn't. But I was quite scarred by the whole affair at that point. So no, I didn't. But then I wasn't looking for one, and one came along. So that's ideal.
I mean, one of the reasons I think people do that, certainly one of the reasons you see it done when you're working in therapy, is because quite often being in a relationship with someone else fills in the parts of yourself that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
So if you struggle with a kind of strong sense of self, you might always feel you need to be with someone else so that they. I mean, I hate this phrase, when people say, "Oh, you complete me."
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem then, because if you feel like someone else completes you, that's not a good place to be.
No.
But when you're feeling like that, obviously, if you do feel that someone else needs to be there to complete you, you're going to want to reach out immediately and find someone else. But it's often not the right thing. If you can go through the pain of completing yourself, you're going to be much better off.
Yeah, we do find it's a lot of people going into recovery will look for a relationship quite quickly, and we always advise against it, but people do as a way of validating themselves, really, in the way that I am still lovable, or therefore I'm going to, I want to make sure I'm going to get this illustrated properly and go out and get into a relationship, which is tough because they really should be taking time before they do that. Yeah,
that's it. Because if you go into recovery, you've lost something, haven't you? You've lost drink.
You've
let go of drink or drugs or whatever it is that you were addicted to, and so not only is there a space in your life for someone else or something else to go, so that would attract you to a relationship. But there's also the rawness of all those emotions you're feeling. You can't no longer can you block out worries that you're not valuable, you're not worth anything.
No.
And it's harder work to build up that self-esteem in yourself than it is to get into a relationship with someone else who you feel will kind of constantly tell you you're worth something. But it's just a shortcut. It's not a good thing to do.
No, it's not a foundation for success, or rarely, that's for sure. Item number 3 here was recognize why you're uncomfortable. Recognize the change and go easy on yourself. Recognizing why you're uncomfortable, is that quite tricky to have a look as to, or is that straightforward? Is there always a protagonist to the way we're feeling? Is it hidden, or is it normally in plain sight?
I think it probably depends. I think, as you said, it was very easy for you to answer, as I imagine it would be easy for most people in recovery to answer. What was it that stopped you getting into recovery? Fear. I would imagine for most people that would be a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah.
I think there are other things that perhaps take a little bit more thinking about. So, for example, going back to relationships again, when you ghost someone and when you don't end a relationship, you want to avoid that ending. You don't want to tell someone, actually, this isn't working for me anymore. Understanding what it is that made you do that, I think for a lot of people is more difficult. There might be shame attached to it. You might feel guilty about the impact that you think you're having on the other person. But it requires you to look honestly at yourself in order to find those reasons. So I think most of the time, if you do the work and you're willing to spend the time asking yourself, what is it that I'm feeling? What feeling do I associate with this proposed ending? I think most of the time you'd be able to find it, but you've got to be prepared to ask the question.
Yeah, no, I agree. And which sort of leads on to the next point with number 4, which is explore the other side of change. Wasn't quite sure about this one, but it said to start to explore your options for a way forward without making firm decisions or jumping to conclusions. Do you understand that? Do you think that's fair?
I think so. I mean, I think that's the idea that on the other side of pain, there's always something better. So if you end something, it's easy to think about what you're leaving behind because you know it.
Yeah.
What it's harder to think about is what comes next because it hasn't happened and it's all in your imagination.
Yeah.
And so I think probably exploring the other side of change is thinking about, well, what could this mean for me? Where could this take me? What are my opportunities? What are the choices I've got? What are the options? And of course, it's difficult to do that until you have embraced the idea of letting go of whatever it is that's behind you. So I think it's the importance of looking forwards instead of looking back and hankering after what you've lost. Because obviously sometimes endings are not ones that we've chosen.
No, quite.
If you are bereaved, you didn't ask for that.
No, exactly.
And so part of being able to embrace what's on the other side of change, which for a lot of people is incredibly difficult, is facing the reality of what your life is going to be like without that person in it anymore. And that's incredibly hard. But until you get to that point, obviously you're not going to be able to kind of move through the pain of the loss.
No, you're not. Exactly right. And I can draw the parallel with recovery quite nicely there, I think, because going back to that fear. And when you're exploring the change, initially, I think most people will look at reasons not to change. They'll look for the other side of where they are at the moment, and then try and validate the answer they've already come up with before they started out. No, I don't want to go into recovery. And I'll look for reasons why not.
Yeah.
And it can be quite a long road till you get to that point where you find the reasons to go into recovery outweigh the reasons not to.
Yeah, because you're comparing something active addiction, with something you don't know. And it's all a promise. It's like jam tomorrow, isn't it?
It is.
Well, when you've been in recovery for X amount of time, you'll start to find that you don't feel so anxious, or you can deal with your emotions better, or you have better relationships, or you can enjoy time with friends without, all those things, but they don't happen immediately. So they're all kind of out there somewhere in the future. But if you've just left drink or drugs behind, it's probably very, very difficult for you to really have some faith that will be there for you. I imagine a lot of people must think, it's all right for you because you've got there, but what if I can't get there? What if I don't get there? What if it's worse for me? What if I can't make it? Those things are likely to terrify people in terms of facing an ending.
There are, and I think it's the wrong phrase to use in recovery. The grass is always greener on the other side, because if you've had a problem with weed, on the other side is no grass at all. There's no grass on the other side. I mean, I was thinking about that. That phrase, I think, is a pretty poor phrase anyway, because what it encourages you to do is to think about comparison between the past and the future. And I don't think that's very healthy. I think it's much better when you're thinking about change to think about, well, whatever this change looks like, regardless of comparison with where I've come from, I will be able to handle it. Yeah, yes.
That's what creates a lot of anxiety in people. They think, well, what if this happens? What if I go into recovery and it's really, really hard for 6 months or a year or 2 years, or I really miss drinking? Rather than thinking like that, it's much better to be able to think to yourself, well, I've got through difficult stuff in my life before. Whatever this holds for me, I'll get through that too. If you can move your mind more towards that and apply that to any ending that you have to face, you're much more likely to feel as if you're going to make your way through it.
No, you're right. And it's strange because we were talking about exactly this in the meeting yesterday, where we were sort of visualizing, two islands really. And the one island was our old horrible using addict self, and the new island was where recovery has really taken hold. And there was a bridge in between. And it was on, while you're walking across that bridge, it's when you're going through all those emotions. And that was this sort of neutral zone. So it sort of fitted in nicely with what I was already thinking about for this week's podcast. So it's nice to sort of speak that through with other people, because people say, well, how long am I going to be on the bridge for? And it's tough. There's no shortcuts, as we've talked about before. You've got to walk that bridge.
Well, that's why I always think that when someone comes up with a metaphor, I don't know whose metaphor that was, the two islands and the bridge, but metaphor is really powerful because it says something. It's come from somewhere in your brain, and it says something about the situation. If you think about that, as you've described there, if you really were in that situation and you were trying to get from this grotty island to this one over here where it was like the promised land, and then there was a bridge between it, you didn't know how long the bridge was, you didn't know what sort of shape the bridge was in, you didn't know who you're going to meet on the bridge, right?
Yeah.
That'd be bloody frightening, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
So that explains quite simply why people are afraid of endings. Because if it was, to get off this island, we're going on this nice, comfortable ferry over to the new one, everybody get on the ferry, wouldn't they? Well, unless they were afraid of drowning and didn't like boats. But most people wouldn't. But in that metaphor, you've created, there's a bridge. Well, what's on it? How long is it? What's going to happen? And that's exactly what we do to ourselves emotionally. We're telling ourselves this is not a straightforward transition from this island to this island. There is work to do between the two, and nobody really knows how difficult that's going to be.
No, they don't. I sort of made that metaphor up as I was going along in the groups, trying to explain it to people. But it wasn't until I thought about it after and thought, yeah, that probably is quite good, because I hadn't really, but I could visualize that, and I have visualized it in the past.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the beauty of metaphor. You do make it up on the hoof as you're going along, because it's coming from your unconscious. And so your unconscious was creating a picture that absolutely represents what you went through in order to get into recovery.
The last point on here was finding someone to talk to, which, people like your good selves come into the equation at that point.
Yeah.
So when you are going through, when you're in this neutral zone, don't stick there on your own. Talk to people the whole time and get advice, etc.
Yeah, no, that is good advice. I mean, the other thing that's kind of worth kind of pointing out at this point is that in therapy, people often struggle with endings too. You might be surprised at the number of people who don't come to therapy and say, listen, I'm feeling like I want to stop for a bit now, or I'm feeling like I feel better and I don't want to come anymore. Quite a lot of people will just stop coming. Yeah. They struggle with the ending.
Yeah.
They might struggle because they feel ashamed or guilty of telling you that they don't want to come anymore. They might think that, you'll think that they haven't found anything useful in the work they've done, or they just feel awkward about having that conversation. So, it even plays out in therapy, and often in therapy. It's really refreshing, actually, when someone says, I want to talk about ending. I want to talk about stopping, or, I might want to come back in the future, but I feel like I want to go out and try and use these things that I've worked on in here. But it's better for you therapeutically if you can practice endings in therapy. Yeah. Because therapy is a sandbox. If you can't do it in therapy, don't think you're going to be able to do it out with the rest of your life, because, you're going to find it difficult.
And there's the point that sort of rounded up my notes was, again, a quote from William Bridges. And he was saying, the way to deal with endings in the neutral zone, or whilst we're in the neutral zone, will equip us to make the best of the new beginning. If we don't allow ourselves to learn and be patient during those times, we will drag all the baggage with us into the new state and inevitably create repeating Groundhog Day type cycles, scenarios, which reminded me of sort of, lapsing and relapsing, etc., when you haven't really taken the time out.
Yeah.
Away, or spent significant amount of time away from your old habits, and we drag all the baggage forward, and we go through the same thing time and time again. Yeah,
because endings require reinvention often.
Yes,
retirement, bereavement, divorce, sobriety. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to be a kind of new version of yourself, and that's hard work.
Yes,
and so it's natural that if we can avoid hard work, we'd rather. But the thing I think that we're, pressing, the point that we're pressing here is, if you embrace that hard work, you end up in a much better place than you would do if you were resisting it.
Yes, I agree. It's a good point. But it leads me on to this point. Do you remember The Office, the UK version of The Office, the original one?
Yeah.
Tim Canterbury, the chap in there. He had an infatuation and was on the verge of a relationship in the early parts of that with a girl called Dawn. Mm-hmm. And she'd moved away from America to America. And he was saying at that point, and I had to look this up because I'd forgotten how he actually phrased it. And he was saying, but if I'm really honest, I never really thought it would have a happy ending. I don't really know what a happy ending is. Life isn't about endings, is it? It's about a series of moments. Which I thought, it sort of goes against what we've been saying here to some extent, but in other ways, I think it sort of encapsulates some of the ideas, doesn't it?
I suppose it depends how you define ending.
Yeah,
you can see ending as something final, or you can see ending as just something that gives way to something new.
But that's really pretty much it on here, as far as my notes are concerned. So it's an
ending.
It's an ending of the first page, because I had to put my gratitude bits and pieces and days of the year on the second page, which I don't like to do normally. I like to have it all on one page. But
you should use a smaller font then, shouldn't you?
Oh, well, I won't be able to read it at that point.
We can't have everything.
I can't. But I've gone on to the second page, which is why I've ended the first page and gone on to the gratitude list.
Right, so you'll go first this week.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things really.
Oh, I've got a couple of things too.
Well, first of all, I mean that's straight on my gratitude list. So I was going to put that feedback from Nick on there. I thought that was lovely and it was really nice to receive. So that obviously had to go on, and probably feedback could be on there every week. Really, any feedback we get is always nice, isn't it? Well, good or bad. Not we've
unless
unless
it's related to plugging your guitar in and your amp feeding back.
Oh yeah. You don't want that, do you?
That's not great, is it?
Not really. No. Unless you're doing it deliberately, like a Jimi Hendrix sort of styly solo.
Yeah, I was never doing it.
No, on purpose.
No.
The other one I had was leftovers. Okay,
Right.
Food leftovers.
Yeah.
It's just it reminded me of this. How grateful I was of food leftovers. I went round to my cousin's house yesterday for dinner.
Yeah.
With her and her partner, and as they always gave me a little goodie box to take away, bits and pieces. Yeah, it's always nice.
That's nice.
So I appreciate it. I'm grateful for that. Next day I can warm that up, and away I go again.
That's nice. Did you get any leftovers from the hog roast you went to last week?
No, I didn't actually. No, I think most of it had gone. I think it had been very well received, and there wasn't anything to take away.
Yeah, leftovers are nice. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll start with my edible thing that I'm grateful for, which is apples.
Apple, right? Okay, yeah. You're grateful for apples.
Every day when I take the dogs out at lunchtime, I always have an apple.
Yeah.
And I was eating my apple the other day, thinking how grateful I am for apples. I don't know what I'd do if apples didn't exist. I'd have to get someone to invent them. Could you invent an apple? Do you think?
Invent an apple.
What could I have instead of an apple? I suppose a crunchy pear might do it.
Yeah.
But it'd have to be crunchy.
Yeah, it doesn't come quite as close, does it?
Although, of course, the converse of that is when you get one of those sort of slightly soft apples, it's incredibly disappointing.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's one of life's biggest disappointments, I might venture to suggest.
I think it is. Yeah, if it's just gone on the turn, when it's starting to get a bit old, or it's got some, if you pick it off the tree and it's got a maggot in it, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's happened lots of times.
Very disappointing.
And the other thing I'm grateful for is dog shampoo.
Dog shampoo, okay.
It was my daughter's birthday on Friday, and we went for a lovely walk through the bluebell woods because obviously it's bluebell time.
It is at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
And we were crossing this big field, and Daisy was lagging behind like she does. Turned around, see her rolling in a big pile of fox shit.
Oh no!
Yeah,
no.
So if you ask Daisy who she wants to shit on her, it'd be the fantastic Mr. Fox. So she was covered in fox poo, and when I got her home, gave her a shower. And I was thinking how grateful I was for dog shampoo because it's quite powerful stuff and it does get rid of the smell because what you don't want is the lingering smell of fox poo in the house.
No, so you can't use normal human shampoo on a dog then?
Well, I don't think it would have I don't think it would be quite powerful enough. The worst smell she's ever had was rolling in badger poo. That was very difficult. Oh, actually, rotten fish is quite bad as well.
Oh, dear, yeah.
And then it was at that time at the nature reserve where she rolled in human poo.
It's unpleasant.
That's not funny.
It is not funny. No,
that really was. That was a low point
in a history of poo rolling. That was right down there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was below the belt. To be honest, literally.
It reminds me a little bit of like when you used to come home from school and because you used to have the knit nurse come around there, didn't they, and check your hair for knits.
Yeah. And
if you found any, you had to have that really strong medicated shampoo. And the smell of that was awful.
Yeah, that was
really strong. It was almost caustic, wasn't it? You used to take the first layer of skin off your scalp.
The knit comb.
With the knit comb, yeah.
You used to have to do it with your kids, didn't you? Because your kids would inevitably get knits.
Yeah.
And that was a laborious old business, that was.
Part of growing up, isn't it?
Yeah, well, at least you wouldn't be able to get knits now, would you?
I haven't got enough hair to...
There'd be nowhere for them to cling on to.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
They'd have to bring tents, wouldn't they?
A barren land. It was like a desert.
All right.
Anyway, days of the year.
Yeah.
Not much on there, really. National Lemonade Day. Do you ever make lemonade?
Well, I have made lemonade, but it's a bit of an arse, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's quite big in America where there's a lot of kids who have a lemonade stall, don't they, and learn about.
Yeah, I'd quite like. I'd like a glass of homemade lemonade, but I prefer someone else made it. I can't really be bothered.
What about the other one? Was the National Roast Leg of Lamb Day?
I'm going to go the same way as I went with the hog roast here. There would have been a time where I'd have been right up for that, but not so much these days.
Not so much that now. No.
How about you?
You've evolved. I'd still have to say that lamb is probably my favourite meat, but I just eat less meat these days.
Yeah.
And the third one was World Laughter Day, which
I
we all
thought
know.
we'd had this. Haven't we had this recently?
No, that was it Tell a Joke Day or something like that? But it's different. Yeah. Yeah.
World Laughter Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think I laugh most days. To be honest.
Yeah, me too. Yes, because I think when we discussed about telling a joke and laugh, and it was, I think I mentioned, when I was in the madness, I hadn't laughed for many weeks and months, and used to resent other people laughing.
Yeah.
Because I felt my life was so miserable. How could anyone else be in a good state of mind? But there we go. So there's World Laughter Day. So take the time out today to have a little chuckle to yourself.
Do you have little stories that you kind of remember from years back that whenever you think about it, it makes you laugh?
Of course, yeah.
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 I think that's one of them. That must be one of the best things about getting old. Collecting those stories that it doesn't really matter how many years has passed and how many times you've thought about it. It always makes you chuckle.
Yeah, and I suppose you're getting older. You've got a larger back catalogue, haven't you?
Exactly. That's what I mean. That's one of the best things about getting old, isn't it?
It is, yes. On this day in music, there's only one thing I wanted to really mention. 1991, Wilson Pickett.
Yep.
He was arrested after running over an 86-year-old man and yelling death threats while driving over the mayor's front lawn in Englewood, New Jersey. So he went on a bit of a bender, really.
What upset Wilson?
I don't know. Well, actually, he was charged. All he was charged with that, but was driving with open bottles of alcohol in his car.
Ah,
so he was literally drinking.
He was under the influence, wasn't he?
He was under the influence, and he went over the mayor's front lawn.
So hang on. I thought you said he drove over an 86-year-old man.
He ran into an 86-year-old man and he yelled death threats at this person, and then went off and drove over the mayor's front lawn.
Right, so he hit an 86-year-old man, yelled death threats at him, drove over the mayor's lawn, but all he was charged with was having open bottles in his car.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
He had the police in his pocket.
Something going on. I didn't understand it.
He had the police in his Wilson pocket, didn't he?
He did.
I'm quite pleased with that one.
Oh, as you should be.
Yeah.
But it used to remind me how I used to shamelessly drive along whilst drinking. Literally drinking and driving at the same time.
Yeah.
But I didn't go over any mares. I didn't hit anyone. But
as far as you know.
As far as I remember. Or drive over the mayor's lawn.
Would you have been able to find the mayor's lawn if
I wouldn't know where it was.
Over it?
No idea at all.
So you don't know if you did drive over the mayor's lawn?
No, I don't. No. I don't remember driving over any lawns.
Don't forget you've lost a decade.
That could have been.
You might have driven over many lawns in that time.
So if we get any feedback this week, said, "Oh, you drove over my lawn."
Yeah,
back in the early 2000s.
If any of you have seen Martin driving over your lawn, then do let us know.
Yeah, bring it up now. We'll sort it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Are we happy with that?
Yeah. There was something else, wasn't there? Oh yeah. If you happen to be on TikTok or Instagram, don't forget to follow us there. On TikTok, it's at Landy Wellbeing, LANDI. Wellbeing, and on Instagram it's sideways_podcast, because we've been putting a few little snippets, videos of our
bits and pieces
chats on there. Yeah. So you'd be very welcome there too.
Excellent.
Yeah, a bit of shameless publicity.
It is shameless, but we'll put the links in the bio.
Don't say that, because you know I won't do it.
You won't. I'll have to do it for you.
Probably. All right.
Okay, mate. Excellent.
See you later. Yeah.
Will do. Thanks.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.